to this talk titled Improving Games Accessibility in Children's Games Through QA, which now I'm trying to say it out loud is a bit of a mouthful. Hope you're all having a great GDC so far. My name is Hannah Bunce, and I am a test engineer at the BBC over in the UK. Just some housekeeping before we begin. Please turn all mobile phones, tablets, anything that might make any noise to silent. And as I'm sure you're all aware, you will be sent surveys for session evaluations at the end of this session. Please fill that in, especially if you like what I'm talking about and want to see more of this in future. So a bit of an overview of the session. I'm going to give a quick introduction to myself, accessibility, and the BBC Children's Games team. An overview of our problem areas within our accessibility testing and QA, our current solutions to these problems, and then I'm going to leave you with some future tips and tricks for safeguarding against these problems and how, hopefully, you might be inspired to do the same in your studios and companies. So to introduce myself, my name is Hannah Bunce. I have been a QA tester for about 4 years now. I have been working at the BBC as both a test engineer and what is known as an accessibility champion for 18 months. And I've been interested in accessibility for the better part of a decade now, when I started discovering that I needed subtitles to hear what was going on in games. So what is accessibility? Accessibility has a number of definitions. In terms of general terms, accessibility is about allowing people to access a thing, regardless of what that thing is, and regardless of their abilities, disabilities, age, race, gender, anything that might be a barrier to entry. And in terms of games, it's about allowing people from all walks of life to access and to play games, which, as I'm sure quite a few of you might be aware of and agree with, that the more people who play your games, the better it is for everybody, especially if you make money from people playing those games. So what is Games at Children's BBC? For those of you who might not be aware or who have no knowledge of the BBC, it stands for British Broadcasting Corporation, and it is a publicly funded corporation in the UK that has an obligation to provide entertainment, information, and education to the British public through a variety of platforms and for audiences of all ages. We do a lot more than just make Doctor Who and Sherlock, I can assure you of that. You might be aware of some of our products like iPlayer, the BBC Sport websites, apps. We cover a wide range of content and for a wide range of audiences. But what we specifically do at Children's BBC with regards to games is we provide games for children aged between 2 and 12 through these two brands, CBeebies and CBBC. CBeebies is aimed at preschool kids, so between the ages of 2 to 6, and CBBC is aimed at a slightly older audience of between 6 and 12. And of course, part of this service is providing entertainment, including people with disabilities. So in order to do this, we have to make sure that our games are as accessible as possible. So to give you an idea of how busy we are and how many games we do, on average, we release 3 games a month, which adds up to quite a lot. And recently, our budgets have been expanding, and as these have been expanding, so have the breadth and complexity of the games. Naturally, this has had an effect on QA and QA resourcing. And also, on top of developing and testing these 3 games a month, we also develop and maintain an in-house interaction engine called Ivor. Any British people in the audience might get that joke. I didn't when I first started working there. So when we started looking at our accessibility QA, we noticed a problem, which is with this game called Something Special, the Looking Game. This was released in the spring of 2016, and it was designed to be a completely blind-friendly game, primarily through the use of screen readers and in-game audio. The game, which if we were in the UK, I'd be able to actually show you. Unfortunately, can't access the game outside of the UK. It's a very simple hidden object game. The main character, Mr. Tumble, who is a hit with kids of all ages, and also some adults with various disabilities, absolutely love this character. He doesn't decide to lose objects, he just loses objects. And he's enlisted your help to find them around his house. When you click on an object to find, you're shown a photorealistic representation of the object, and then also the Makaton symbol for this object. The object is then animated to hide behind one of 3 buttons, which are a red, blue, and green button. We also provide a colorblind mode of this game where the object will hide behind a square, circle, or triangle button. So we don't rely just on color. So when this game went live, we thought, great, we were shouting about it from the rooftops, like this was our first ever completely blind-friendly game. So a couple of weeks later, we received a complaint from a blind player stating that the game could not be accessed via VoiceOver on iOS. It was fine on TalkBack on Android, but just not VoiceOver on iOS. So after much panicked investigation between myself, the project manager, and my test lead, who were the only people really assigned to the project at the time, we discovered that the final build we tested actually broke the screen reader functionality. This final build that we received came in 3 hours before the game had to go live. So basically 0 time for proper regression testing or any kind of testing. At that point, we only had time to say, yep, this game loads on a few devices. It doesn't just crash and burn. So we went live with it. So this, whilst is a horrible thing for our team to have to have gone through, it did kickstart the improvement period that we so desperately needed. Around the same time, development started on a new CBeebies app called Playtime Island. Again, it's only available in the UK. I apologize, as it's quite a fun app. So the purpose of this game was to bring our HTML5 games into the hands of our app audiences. So parents could download our games, put them in the app, and then take their kids on long car journeys and keep them quiet. So now we not only needed to consider games accessibility, but also app accessibility. And at times, these can be 2 completely different beasts. So this introduction of the app also doubled our QA requirements. 1 certification period for games to go on the website, and 1 certification period to go into the app. And that's not including the actual app testing itself. So naturally, we ramped up recruitment. And within a few months, we went from a team of 3 testers to 6, which in turn meant doubling the accessibility testing training. And whilst the recruitment was going on, we also had some issues behind the scenes with guidelines. So the BBC as a whole has a wealth of guidelines for digital accessibility. These are used throughout our entire digital portfolio. However, very few of these guidelines actually apply to games, which caused a lot of confusion for some of our developers, a lot of confusion for the designers, and naturally a lot of confusion for us testers. So a lot of our improvements actually came from compiling a games accessibility document from the ground up with the help of the BBC's digital accessibility team, and the resources available from sites such as gamesaccessibilityguidelines.com. And we also found it was actually a great way to get UX and QA working together, as these 2 departments very rarely interact. So QA is the final boss before going live, but it doesn't need to be. We now have QA looking at projects from kickoff meetings through to prototypes, to alpha stage, beta, and then final release candidate. So QA are involved from the very beginning. And now we also have time dedicated in kickoff meetings for QA and also accessibility, and then in turn accessibility QA. So this was one of the major improvements that we started, was we got buy-in from the project managers, the product managers, and our content producers to get QA in from the ground up. So one of our other solutions at the moment is a lot of documentation. So not much has changed in the practical aspect of our testing. We still do our manual testing much the same way as we did before, and we're currently looking at automation solutions. So the more effective changes have come from implementing more robust processes. We adopted a certification period very similar to what you would see from Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. We implemented this about 12 months ago, and it has been a major hit with all of our developers. So these are just basically a set of technical tests that must be passed before a game is cleared to go live. And the biggest of these tests, the biggest section, is accessibility, which is what this first screenshot is just a snippet of our accessibility test cases in TestRail. These test cases just live there. They are generic enough to be used across multiple projects at multiple times. And they are written in such a way that any tester can come in and could just understand what needs to be done straight away. The second screenshot I have there is just the title page of our Children's Games Accessibility Guidelines and Recommendations, which is a document that gets sent out to any of our third-party developers, our internal developers, our UX designers, and basically anyone involved in the project. These documents are all hosted in a place where anybody who might even be thinking about doing a game for us can actually read them and get on board with our ideals before development even begins. So more improvements that we've made. These are what I tend to call the 4 C's, because they're just 4 things that all begin with the letter C. And the first of which is collaboration. So over the last year, we have undertaken 2 massive research projects in a crossover between QA and UX. The first of these research projects was in collaboration with the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, with experts in autism. The second project that we did was a collaboration with 2 external accessibility consultants to do an audit of all of our games, which at the time there were over 200 games that these consultants helped us audit to see how many of our games could be played with 1 or 2 switches. The first project, we found some interesting things that I can't talk about too much today, unfortunately, with how to design for kids with autism and how to keep them included. We went to a bunch of specialist schools and we gained some major insights, and it was worthwhile having a QA tester there to go back and report back to the rest of the QA team, because we found this helps increase the understanding of how and why things are being designed in a particular way, which in turn improves the quality of bugs that developers get and just all around improves the quality of the project. So the second thing is to champion accessibility at all levels. At the BBC, we have a accessibility champion network, which at the moment is over 100 people strong. And these are people from all walks of the project hierarchy, so from heads of departments all the way down to developers and testers. And these people consist of a wide range of technical backgrounds as well. So whilst creating a network might be impractical within a game studio, there's nothing wrong with being a champion of accessibility yourself. The way we like to think of things is that if you can see a way for your games or your product to be more accessible for your players, speak up. The results are nearly always worth it. And then finally on to consistency. We found that having documents written in consistent ways, in consistent layouts, helped everybody to understand what we were trying to portray in these documents. And then communication. Communication is absolutely key in QA and accessibility. Because whilst common sense normally prevails, this is a point that most tend to forget. The open communication lines between the games team and the apps team, and then the apps teams are third-party developers, and the apps team and the QA team, basically you see the picture with open communication lines with all different teams, have been unparalleled in helping everybody improve the accessibility of our games. And since implementing all of these, we've not had a single accessibility complaint, and we have released well over 50 games since that original complaint came in. So as I said earlier, accessibility testing and accessibility design are now actual agenda items on project kickoff meetings. And we have found that accessibility issues found during certification of these projects, of these games, have decreased, especially with developers who show enthusiasm for accessibility during these kickoff meetings. And now that our QA team is now larger than it's ever been before, we used to have monthly QA meetings. They were only about 10 to 20 minutes long, just a quick catch-up, say, oh, what have you been testing this month, et cetera, et cetera. We've now increased this to weekly, and we've increased them to 45 minutes. These allow us to go into more technical details of what we've been testing and how we've been testing it. And it also allows for us to share new accessibility tips and tricks and to be passed on to the team. So the future, there's obviously always more room for improvement. And whilst we're in a better position than we've ever been with regards to accessibility and also with regards to QA, we are always looking to make things better. So the first thing that we want to do is more training. We are ramping up recruitment again, and naturally we want people to be on board with our accessibility ideals from day one. So what we're looking to do is when we hire a new tester, as well as getting them on board with all of our normal processes, we're going to go through them with accessibility testing, give them a few tasks to get their feet wet, and just basically help them from day one. This should be common sense, but again, maintaining documentation is something that our games team struggle with, and I'm sure is an ongoing issue with many other studios. We have taken it on ourselves in QA to maintain these documentations because normally we're the ones that need it the most, and if no one else is going to do it, we might as well do it. So something that is what I think is quite unique to the BBC is having specialised working groups. I founded a working group called AlleyCats, which stands for Accessibility Champion Testers, in the summer of last year. People who are invited to this group are people who are test engineers, QA analysts, but are also part of the BBC's Accessibility Champion networks. So we get together on a bi-monthly basis, and we learn things from each other about, like, so for example, sport, some testers from sport had a new way of doing automation accessibility testing, which then they shared with people from another department, and now that other department, their product's accessibility has just skyrocketed. And we like to emphasize communication. As I said earlier, we found that with having open lines of communication, whether it's just be going up to someone's desk or through more formal means, having these open lines of communication is just helping everybody. And then finally, we want to review our processes on a more regular basis. I recommend something between 2 to 3 months to review your processes, because if you review them, say, every 2 weeks, that's not enough time for new processes to sink in and for you to actually see if they're working or not. Thank you. I did go through that quite quickly. I do apologize. Any questions? If you have any questions, there's a microphone there. Please use it.
Hi there.
Hey.
First of all, thanks for your talk.
Thank you.
I was wondering, I'm from Lionbridge Game Services. We work a lot with localization and other languages, so I'm kind of wondering how much you put under this umbrella accessibility as far as people who speak languages other than English.
That is a very good question that I actually answered after a talk I did on Monday. I should have actually put it in this. Sorry. As part of our remit to help the British public, we also produce games for Welsh, Gaelic and Irish. And these do present unique challenges, mostly to do with subtitles. Because I don't know if you're familiar with Welsh at all, but compared to English, there's a lot more characters. So we've had some unique challenges with regards to the size of subtitles and where to place them on screens. And I do have some amazing screenshots of a game that was just basically covered in subtitles in the Welsh language. You couldn't see the game at all. So with that, we basically edited the script a little bit. Obviously, we got permission from all the editorial staff and the brand owners to do that. But that's the only unique challenge we've had with regards to language, is just with subtitles.
I guess part of my question is when it comes to folks who are there in immigrant populations who speak a language that isn't an official language.
Yeah.
So is that just a totally different department that works on that, or is that part of your
No, we
purview?
only look at English language things, and then about 5 or 6 games per year will be translated into Welsh, Gaelic and Irish, which are the official languages in the UK.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Stephanie from Vision Game Labs, and we're based in Wales, actually, so Welsh is a thing for us. I was just wondering, really, when you were developing the things for visual impairment, whether or not you had used anything to determine the level of visual impairment, or whether that's something that you would like to work on together.
That is definitely something we would like to look at. We do a lot of testing around colour contrasting to help with people with low vision. We obviously, because also with games for kids, they're full of bright colours and high contrast anyway, so we're sort of lucky in that regard that we're making games for kids and that's what kids like. So colour contrast is our main thing, but also like the size of icons and everything, because yet again, for games for kids, sorry, we like to keep the art quite simple and well-defined, which again is kind of cheating for people with low vision, but it helps everybody. I hope that answers your question a bit.
Yeah, fab.
Thank you.
Fab. And if you want to have a chat after, please.
Yeah, I'll be in the wrap-up room afterwards. Thank you. Any other questions? Nope, excellent. Thank you.